In regards to Ruth, isn't the main point of the game to have fun and collect nanos and do missions? Yeah, that's the main point of the game. That's the main selling point. How do gumballs, potions, and vehicles and make it easier for the player hurt anything? You still have to level up and gain fusion matter. On top of this, there's no cheating since nothing affects other players, outside of NPC killing, which takes away from other players' ability to complete a mission. The game in its current state is pretty much a role-playing game with friends. I don't see how hacking, and I disagree with the tower hack, is hurting any other person's ability to play the game. Just like with the argument on multi-accounting being just don't do it, you can avoid collecting a bunch of taros from others and just play the game like normal. In games like Pokemon players and Fire Emblem, when the game becomes too easy, they purposely make it harder for themselves. The Nuzlocke challenge come to mind, and there's actually a psychological word for it. It's called flow. When things are too easy, you give up. You tend to give up. When things are too hard, you tend to give up. If you can find that sweet spot where it's not too hard and not too easy, that's the part where your brain engages in flow and learning becomes a lot more natural and time just passes by. You said that any item other than items that don't have ties to a specific occasion should be reintroduced. I don't see the point in excluding any item if you don't care about them losing value. In other words, pencilback, mission caps, and the original clockwork should be reintroduced and made available to give out to players because players should be able to wear what they want without it being limited time. So I can try and understand what Rome is trying to say, and it kind of does remind me about economics in real life and capitalism itself, that the market should judge everything, but the problem then becomes we should protect these industries right here because for some silly reasons they're important, and there's a form of protectionism towards it. So I can see, I can try and understand that if everything he's trying to a radical proposal is to just make everything free, including the limited edition items and including the items that people actually had to work hard for, because at the end of the day, in Rome's perspective, the vision is that the game is just an RPG and the MMO aspect is severely left behind. You even go as far to say the items to be reintroduced as a limited time thing, and again, just make the items permanent to the game, since making them limited time and reintroducing them with a 100k price tag is contradicting the arguments that items should have no value, which both you and Slavin say here in previous with these quotes. In other words, they would rather focus the game by earning money and doing economics instead of what it should be, a fun game where you can dress however you want. I think you're kind of taking that out of context. He agrees that items have value, but I can also but again, I've already disagreed with this as well. I've already said this multiple times. Yada yada yada. Anyways, he's quoting this. So I ask, which is it? Is the economy a big part of the game or what? Do items matter, or are taros the only thing that matter? Your posts contradict each other. The point in them being free is to accommodate what the original poster said, that players will be able to dress how they want and do what they want with items in the game. Okay. In regards to Slavin, the thing with items being grindable is that the game has a flaw with alt farming and multi-accounting that gives different players a very significant advantage in collecting crates and manipulating RNG values. You're not manipulating the RNG values, but what you are doing is that you obtain crates 2 to 4 times faster because you have 2 to 3 more characters alongside with you. That's a very subtle yet important difference. Because if you were to truly manipulate the RNG values, then all you would need is like 1 person, 1 kill, and then you would get a gold crate. There is no point in adding all of these items back as grindable items when the same exact thing will happen as it did when they were limited time. Specific players would hoard and collect those items and in turn try to sell it. That right there is what I'm guilty of. I took advantage of the multi-account thing with Rodney. I sold 30 plus Rodneys, and you know, I was recently having a conversation about this with Rome and stating I think it was actually a win-win because, you know, I made my millions of taros and I made 30 people happy. However, the more that I think about it, if I had not done the multi-accounting, those 30 people most of them would have probably have just grinded the item themselves. They would form groups, make friends, socialize, and would increase the longevity of the update. And I'm not the only one who has that significant advantage where I can have 4 characters at the same time. There's other people who do that. I'm not the only one. If I can grind and sell 30 Rodneys, then how much more for those other people that also sell 15 Rodneys, 30 Rodneys, if not much more than me? You know? So I can understand. I can definitely understand that. And that's one of the fundamental things of this video. Try to understand people's perspective. Okay. The only difference is they'd be worth even less since they would be permanently in the game and be in constant supply. A higher supply means a lower demand. Yeah, that's basic economics. Holding a monopoly over item is not these players' fault. I mean, why would they have a monopoly? Their incentive is to go sell them for taros or for items. If anything, if you did not play the game when the item was out, they give you a chance to collect it from the fact they are hoarding it and selling it after the event already happened. The only time your whole monopoly concept holds up is if players had a limited amount of resources that we had to fight over. Okay, he's trying to counter argue. So he's understanding that perspective that the monopolies are bad, and this is an example of a monopoly turning bad. This isn't the case, as every player has equal opportunity to grind and generate an item via crates. Big Chill Wings was crafted on purpose by the developers because Mike the God had bought up most of the item, which is not his fault. Players sold it to him. He didn't hack them into the game or do some crazy glitch to steal them or scam them off players. They chose to give him the item. So yeah, I can understand that. So in terms of in real life, are monopolies good or bad, right? If a service is so overwhelmingly good that it just beats everyone else, is it the fault of the business that the other competitors, they're not good enough? And yes, I do agree, players sold it to him, although some of the trades were questionable. Something important here is that although Mike and a few other individuals monopolized the item, that's just they did that with the purpose of inflating the prices of these items. What Mike did was that he did not just buy these items at ultra low prices. I mean, he did that for a couple dozen of them, but ultimately he also traded expensive items to jack up the price. Right? People have free will. If I were to give you 20 gumballs for those Big Chill Wings and they press accept, then it's a fair trade at the end of the day, right? Is it? Or maybe not. Or maybe that person just got taken advantage of with them being oblivious. As the saying goes, don't hate the player, hate the game. A lot of these issues you're having, you need to be blaming on the developers, not players who collect items. Do I think some players scam? Yes. Simple Sun Zen is a straight up ripoff artist. He forced stupid amount on items that players bought. Whose fault is that though? It's those players' fault. They chose to buy from them when there are several other players they can buy from for whatever item they need. Even Ruth here in this thread charged hard prices in trades because he held her own value on items. The argument that people have to charge items at fair prices and that people have monopolies should only hold weight if those items or resources cannot be perceived from other venues or other means. So yeah, I strongly agree with you here. He is understanding, yeah, I can understand the hatred for monopolies, but I can also understand that those monopolies came up through natural means where no hacking was involved because the players themselves, they were willing to go trade with them despite there being other players that they could trade with, right? So a huge shout out to Simple Sun Zen. He made 100 million taros, and I think he gave it away to one person. He doesn't want to say who, but I know who it is. It's the fault of those people that got ripped off. Also, you argue that people can't force values on the mission caps because they are not tradable. Okay, so because people have no opportunity to get it, we can't force value on it. Therefore, it's a good thing. How is this holding up any different than a limited time item that never returns? You literally say it's a thank you for supporting the players through the early life of the game, but this is not the same logic that should be applied to limited time items that players collect. They should honor the rarity of an item because those players were around during that time to collect said item. Sounds like the same exact thing to me. So I can understand what he's trying to say because like those mission caps, let's just say like there's 100 of them. There will always be 100 mission caps unless you start deleting them. But then the problem then becomes a monopoly. But he argues that monopolies are natural and there's no cheats involved, and the players are willing, right? So it's complicated, and I can see both sides. So these are excellent counter arguments right here. What if I'm 13 and find out about this cool Clockwork set and I decide I want to roleplay a Clockwork player with the original colors? Then I'm floored because I find out I was not around during some sneak peek and it was not even tradable, so I have to settle for recolors of it and never get a chance at the original. This is kind of comedic. This is kind of comedic in a way, but it's understandable. It's understandable with this sort of logic. I can finally understand why these items, why all of the items should at least be accessible. What if I want the pencil back item, but I find out because I wasn't around for some summer artwork contest, I would never get a chance at that item. So there you are with no way to play the game, how to want to look, just because the developers decided only a few people around during that time should be able to have an item. So I think that's a good argument. But I can still, that's a good argument. If they probably, maybe a sort of compromise here is to make those items tradable. A compromise is to make the mission caps tradable, the artist Brett, the pencil backpack tradable, and the original Clockwork tradable. Because again, similar to event items, there is a finite amount of them. They will never come back. And ironically, what happens is that winners are the ones who write history, and the ones who lose, they're portrayed in a bad light. But if you can actually try to see their perspective and understand what they mean, then you can understand that, oh, this actually makes sense. See, the same logic goes both ways. And instead of trying to say a few items to be excluded because of a thank you to some players, maybe you should examine that it is more on the developer's hands how items can be valued and less on the players. If anything, as I said in my... Oh, so this does remind me of this. So it's kind of like capitalism and socialism and communism. The capitalist works so hard that he actually gets everything. Whereas the socialists and the communists, they want everything to be equal. What should it be? My personal opinion is that if the developers are like the government, and the players, and any player can be like a capitalist. Capitalists, they want as little government interference as possible, right? But again, it's complicated. There needs to be some sort of compromise with this, and sometimes compromises can't happen. Sometimes one way really has to go, even there is a significant divide. If there's a 2/3 majority, at least go with that. And the reality is that the vast majority of players that don't care about the economy, they would rather just want it to go be free. This has also led to developers of retro resorting to artificially creating money sinks to lessen the disparity through means like vehicles and the old mysterious vendor. What do you even mean? Money sinks for what? To get rid of the people's money who have millions of taros? Why? If that's the case, they're doing a poor job. Barely any players logged in unless it was an event, and even when an event was going on, they would give out a free vehicle that would not end until the event was over. That's actually false. The vehicle would last for at most like a week. What disparity? Like I said before, some players are either A, not playing the game, and B, too lazy to grind money for things. Yeah. So I can see, I can definitely understand. That's the hashtag of this video, understand.